Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where socially awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co host, the Nerdy Occultist, aka The Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone. One more week remains, and then we will be in the glorious October country once again.
And I'm your host, last time I want to be, the Brains of Pop Culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am genuinely pretty good, mostly because despite what the black pill Gary from Neurotic Geeks and Gamers and and critical drinkers want you to believe, Agatha is not even remotely as bad as She-Hulk, The Acolyte, Velma, or The Marvels. It is definitely better than they want it to be, and it's kind of funny to see them try to make it be as bad as those things so that their preconceived notion about it can be correct. But it isn't. And the fact that it's been good has given me life the last few days, if I'm being entirely honest. It also has quite a lot of rewatch value, but we'll get into that later with the first topic, I think, actually.
Yeah. I still haven't seen it, so I'm going to reserve judgment.
Which is fair. But so far, we're 3 episodes in. Now, I will change my opinion if it starts to get bad, but so far it has not.
Alright, give me 1 sec. Things being weird.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, don't look. So Dalton basically sent all the articles this week.
Mm-hmm.
So this is originally from theguardian.com. Agatha All Along Review, The Perfect Show for Halloween Season, written by Lucy Mannigan. This was originally published September 19th, 2024, so about 9 days ago.
It's a dark day in the world when I am more inclined to agree with The Guardian than I am with the cultural commentators ostensibly on our side, but here we are. I am agreeing with The Guardian. Hopefully the world does not explode. Moving forward.
Right. Okay. Subheader is: This royally entertaining Marvel series slips seamlessly from comedy to tragedy as Catherine Hahn is so good you can barely take your eyes off of her. An absolute treat.
I mean, that is more or less true. It's a little bit more fawning praise than I would give it, because the show does have its flaws, i.e., it does go a little bit more like suburban or hipstery with its humor than is always entirely warranted, but most of the jokes land and most of the setup isn't ruined by jokes. I think this show has a really good balance actually of humor and like actual substance, because most of the time the humor comes in when the characters are sassing each other and they actually feel like something those characters would say. So it avoids basically all of the problem with most of Phase 4 and Phase 5's humor, in that this is a thing that someone would actually say in this circumstance. And it's not so overly common that it borks the tone. Again, at least within the first 3 episodes. I want to keep stating this so that I don't get called a shill or whatever the fuck. But if the show starts to get bad, I will change my positive opinion of it to a negative one. However, I have watched 3 episodes of Agatha all along, and I have rewatched all 3 of them, which is in and of itself a sign that it's not completely shit, because shows like The Acolyte, She-Hulk, Velma, and movies like The Marvels were barely even watchable the one time. And by about 2/3 of the way through any of those, you were screaming and whining and saying, I just want to go home, leave me alone. But this show, I have watched all 3 episodes multiple times. The first one is probably the weakest, but that's because, spoilers, if anyone remembers the ending of WandaVision, you remember that Wanda put Agatha under a similar hex that she had the rest of the town under for most of WandaVision. And so she was trapped in her own warped alternate reality for the first episode. But as soon as she got out and was back to herself, most of what was wrong with episode 1 had vanished. Anyway, moving forward.
The spinoff has surely obtained was surely ordained the minute Catherine Hahn hit her first mark in front of the WandaVision cameras. She played the superhero couple's
Bless you.
Thank you. Nosy neighbor Agnes, who was in fact a Salem witch named Agatha Harkness, bent on acquiring Wanda's powers for herself. Hahn's darkly comic, ineffably compelling performance almost stole the show. Not did. It was, for the long time and well-respected character actor, a star-making part at last.
I mean, small correction here, because I'm not going to slow pitch The Guardian just because I happen to be vaguely on the same page as them for once. Agatha didn't actually go in wanting to take Wanda's power for herself. She was specifically drawn to Westview because she felt thousands of spells go off simultaneously, and she thought that a sister witch of hers had found a way to do things that she didn't know how to do. Her initial plan was to find out who was casting the magic and then essentially get pointers or talk shop with them. It was only after Wanda showed herself to kind of be an idiot savant with no actual understanding of what she was doing that Agatha saw her as undeserving and started the take her power plan. And even then, she still woke Wanda up. And moreover, if we're looking at this from like a God's eye view, if Agatha hadn't come and meddled with Wanda's magically enforced delusions, the events of Westview would have continued unabated, probably indefinitely thereafter. It was only because of Agatha's meddling that Wanda did eventually wake up, and even then, once she was awake, Agatha helped her an awful lot, especially in episode 8, by doing the whole basics of witch school and then Ghost of Christmas Past routine with her. So, all things considered, Agatha was kind of the good guy in WandaVision. if you frame Wanda's immoral actions correctly. Because Agatha mostly just meddled with Wanda's spell by waking people up from it, which, given that they were all unaware, unawarely in terms of Wanda, she didn't realize she was mind controlling all of them, but she was in reality mind controlling all of them. And moreover, her only real goal, even when she decided to take Wanda's power, was just to take Wanda's power and have done with it. Which, obviously hindsight is 2020 and everything, but given what happened during the events of Multiverse of Badness, are we honestly going to say that Agatha taking Wanda's power wouldn't have been the good ending for pretty much everyone involved? Because as far as we know, when Agatha takes someone's power, she doesn't really have some evil demonic master plan to put them to use for. She just takes the power and continues on her merry way, drawing as little attention to herself as possible over the centuries. So, Agatha winning in WandaVision would have been the good ending, as opposed to what actually happened, which was very much the bad ending. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call Agatha's plan just to take Wanda's power, because again, originally she just wanted to meet a sister witch and then talk shop with her on the cool things that she managed to do. And only after Wanda showed herself to be kind of a moron did Agatha go, okay, you clearly have too much power for your own good. I'm going to take it from you because I know how to be responsible with it. Moving on.
Right. I thought all along the new 9-part series from the creator of WandaVision, Jack Schaefer, picks up just after the final events of the original, which saw Agatha drained of her powers and trapped in the perfect and therefore hellish suburb of Westview. Agatha is an Agnes again when we first meet her, this time working as a police detective just off a suspension for punching a suspect on a Jane Doe case. Gradually, as with WandaVision, the walls of this reality break down until it is revealed that, in fact, she is still in Westview, being warily monitored by her neighbors as she becomes increasingly unhinged. Rio Vidal, Audrey Plaza, a witch from Agatha's original coven, which the latter destroyed, arrives to exact vengeance, though she is not allowed to kill her former partner in a cold crime, and tell her that others will be along to finish the job by burning, hanging, or drowning. Really, says Agatha, by now a battered heap on the floor. There are no new options.
Yeah. The joke there, of course, being those were all execution methods at various different points in the burning times. Burning was specifically for a theological crime. Hanging was for a civil crime, particularly in England, and drowning was actually a method of determining if someone was a witch, because the thought was water was pure and therefore would reject anything evil. Whereas if you were a normal person, you were pure enough that the water would accept you, which of course had the unfortunate side effect of
Did they not? Sorry, it's just God. People are stupid. They did not realize that people would fucking drown in the water. You would be killing it. Okay, if they were innocent, then that makes the people who drowned them murderers, thus damning their souls.
They thought it was fine because if they were innocent, God would intervene on their behalf and they would go up to heaven when they died.
But you still damned yourself.
Yeah, no, I know it's stupid, but that was the rationale. The rationale was sure we shortened their mortal life significantly, but if God takes pity on them, they'll just go to heaven automatically anyway. So we actually did them a favor by killing them, so they don't have to stay in the sinful world any longer. And yes, I know how fucked up that sounds, but that was the rationale they were operating under. So if you survive, bad news, you're a witch and we're going to hang or burn you. If you don't survive, well, then at least you'll go to heaven and you don't have to stay in the sinful, corrupted world of man anymore. Wah, 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 wah.
Right.
Moving on.
Yeah. With the persecutors due before sundown, there is nothing else for it but to put together a new coven to help her open the portal to the Witch's Road, which, if anyone can reach the end of it, will restore his or hers heart's desire. In this, she is helped by the teenage boy, Heartstopper's Joe Locke. She has effectively kidnapped during her detective delusion. He's a huge Agatha fan and has been studying the dark arts. He wants to join her on the journey so at the end of the road he can be granted magical powers. She doesn't know his name or anything else about him. Someone has enchanted him so that whenever he tries to tell her anything personal, all she hears is silence. Her fellow witches nickname him Teen, which is slightly better than Agatha's random boy or pet, though the sweet child seems happy to answer to anything.
Okay, I realized this was written before episode 3 came out, so I'm not holding this against the Guardian writer. But for the sake of transparency, we find out in episode 3 that the binding hex on Teen that prevents him from saying anything personal about himself applies to all of witch kind, not just to Agatha. And by the way, just pointing this out there, for all of those people who think this show is woke for some reason, Teen, despite being the most inexperienced out of the bunch here, frequently gets the most based lines I have ever heard in a magical show. Like, one of the reasons why I am not, joining in on the hate mob for Agatha all along is, for one thing, they appear to at least have done a significant amount of witch homework, which is massively appreciated because it's like pulling teeth to even get to like the Star Trek technobabble version of magic on most things. So the fact that this male character, although he is probably gay, he has a boyfriend, or his boyfriend tries to call him in one scene, but again, they don't make a thing of it, so I don't fucking care. I only care about the intrusions of social justice insofar as they make the things that would otherwise be good bad, and it doesn't appear to be negatively impacting things here. But they allow him to get away with quite a lot of based lines, like in episode 2, after Agatha gets out of the remains of Wanda's hex. One, it's made very clear that it was actually the interventions of the based teen kid that made her able to get out of the hex finally. He did a spell to free her. 2, she like her first line of dialogue to him after the hex is broken is literally giving him a compliment, which would never fucking happen in a woke show, because of course he managed to break the remains of Wanda's spell, and Agatha responds to this by saying, if you've got the goods to break a spell cast by the Scarlet Witch, why do you need the Witch's Road? And again, they let him be quite based, because he says, I've studied a lot, sure, but that can only take you so far. The Witch's Road offers what each person is missing at the end of it, and what I'm missing is power, which is based. In the third episode, because I got the order mixed up there for a second. In the third episode, when they're actually on the Witch's Road, they of course ask, how in the fuck are we supposed to do this, given that most of us are bound or magically neutered at the moment? And it is the based teen kid who says, there's always the slow and steady version of magic, the manual variety. The craft part of witchcraft, which again, based. Because it demonstrates that the show at least understands that knowledge is more important than power. In many ways, Teen is the opposite of Wanda in that sense. he has a lot of knowledge, but very little in the way of power. Whereas when Wanda first met Agatha in WandaVision, she specifically says, power isn't your problem, it's knowledge. I.e., she has a fuck ton of natural affinity and power for magic, but not the first fucking clue of how to use it. Well, Teen is kind of the opposite. He knows all of the book learning that he possibly can, but he doesn't have the juice to actually actualize most of it. Which again demonstrates that the writers, whoever they were, did enough research in between this and WandaVision that I am on the show's side. But point being, there's a spell on Teen that hides him from witch kind, or witch folk, I believe is the term they use. And it does apply to all of them. Anyway, I'm getting off into semantics now. Continuing on.
Assembling the coven is terrific fun. Everyone has different strengths, divination, potion making, and so on. And reasons for agreeing to accompany Agatha, even though her reputation as a woman is dangerous as she is cantankerous, and no one does cantankerous like Han, precedes her. I haven't seen you since I made a pointed effort never to run into you, says Jen, Shashir Samata, who has a goopish but unsuccessful wellness store. How are you?
Okay.
Awful.
So one, this is another good aspect of the writing. You know how in most like villain spin-offs or villain-centric movies, they try to do the sympathetic tragic villain bullshit? Well, they don't do that here. Agatha is as much of a bitch and as much of a villain as she ever was in WandaVision. And everyone around her treats her like she has the fucking plague. Because they all know that she is the witch who siphoned away other witches' magic and who has done incredibly dark shit vis-a-vis the Darkhold. So, again, another bit of kudos I have to give to the show. They're not pulling the Maleficent card or the Wicked card or the Elsa from Frozen card in this case. And it is very much appreciated because that was probably my worst fear with regards to Agatha all along, that they were going to try to make her a sympathetic anti-hero instead of allowing her to be the bitch that she's supposed to be and was already set up as being. And so far, again, I've only seen the first 3 episodes so far, but at every interval where someone can demonstrate that they don't trust her or that she's done terrible, horrible things, so far it has been very clearly emphasized. And no amount of she's an anti-hero, really sympathetic backstory bullshit has happened. In fact, quite the contrary. In episode 3, Jen, who has some level of history with Agatha, mentions to based teen boy there that Agatha actually sold her baby, her son, for access to the Darkhold. We don't know who she sold it to. I assume someone, I assume it was kind of a devil at the crossroads type thing. But we have explicitly been stated and shown that at some point or other, Agatha had a son that she willingly gave away for access to the Darkhold. And that is not the kind of backstory you give to a character who is going to be my sympathetic, tragic backstory, I'm an anti-hero really type character. Granted, Agatha does have her sympathetic moments, but she had those in WandaVision as well. Like I say, her first plan was just to find out who was casting all of these spells and get them to give her pointers, and only after she saw how dangerous Wanda was and how inexperienced and much of an idiot savant she was, did she go, okay, you are far too dangerous to be expected to handle this power appropriately. I'm going to take it for myself because I can be more responsible than you, which is fine. But yeah, they have not once in the 3 episodes that I have seen, tried to make Agatha more sympathetic than she was in WandaVision. And that is very much appreciated because I am so sick to death of these no villain is really evil because everyone has an emotionally scarring Doofenshmirtz backstory bullshit. Because they haven't done that yet. Anyway, moving on.
Right. Okay. Jen joins the road trip to escape multiple lawsuits. Her products have endangered historically our kind don't do well in courtrooms. Psychic Lilia, Patty Lapone, to avoid impending homelessness. Ex-cop Alice Alihan to find out what happened to her missing mother and Sharon. The 70s show Deborah Jo Rupp because Agatha bullies her into it.
Bullies is a bit of a stretch here.
Tricks, I would say more trick.
Yeah, she's tricked. She's not really bully because what Agatha. Okay, I'm going to have to spoil the shit out of this a little bit, but
You've been spoiling it anyway, so I don't see the point.
It shouldn't detract from your enjoyment because, like I said, I have spent the last week or so rewatching the shit out of at least the last 2 episodes of Agatha. Again, I kind of don't like the first one because it focuses way too much on. It takes too much time for Agatha to come out of the hex, but the thing of it is, the long and the short of it is the Witch's Road is a dimension in Marvel Comics, and yes, it is in the comics, that is a source of magical energy for witches. But in order to gain the thing they want most, the thing they desire most, or the thing they're the most missing, they have to go through a set of trials in order to demonstrate their knowledge of the craft. I.e., they have to prove they have the skills of a witch to gain the power of the Witch's Road. And Jen's character is essentially magically neutered by a binding spell that was put on her, Agatha says, roughly a century before the events of the show, so 1920s or thereabouts. And in absence of her actual magic, she has basically taken to using her potion skills to
Alchemy.
basically... No, potions. They specifically reference it as potions.
Well, in the Meet the Characters video on YouTube, the actress brings up alchemy, so...
So far, most of her brewing has fallen more under what was referred to in the Middle Ages as wort cunning, i.e. herbal lore. So it's a little closer to, like, green witchery or natural magic than it is alchemy. And yes, I realize I'm splitting hairs and using very technical definitions there, but so be it. But anyway, so Jen is bound because somebody stole her magic roughly a century ago. And she's been using her skills to make her living as, like, one of those all-natural health shop hipster type people. And she claims that all of her stuff is all natural, but she is very obviously lying. And so now she has roughly 800 misrepresentation lawsuits pending because not only is her stuff not all natural, but her recipes tend to be dangerous. And so many people have been hurt by her products. And that's why Jen goes. Lilia Koldaru, the divination witch, basically just goes because fate told her so. Because apparently when she delivers a prophecy or delivers a divination, she loses control of herself. And so at one point in episode 2, when Lilia is automatic writing a list of witches that Agatha can add to her coven, she inadvertently puts her own name down, even though she specifically said she doesn't want to go. But now that she's prophesied it, she's kind of duty-bound by fate to go. As for Alice, her mother was actually lost on the Witch's Road. She tried to go on the Witch's Road to reverse or unwind a family curse that they had been on, or they had been under, so that every woman in her family ends up dying prematurely through mysterious circumstances. And she goes to try and get herself and her daughter off of the curse by using the power at the end of the Witch's Road, but she was lost in it, implying that she failed. And so what Agatha does, after getting Alice fired from her security job, because Alice, by the way, is an ex-cop, after she gets her fired, she tempts her by saying, "This is the only way you'll ever be able to figure out what happened to your mom." And that basically, every time Agatha tries to recruit someone, they tell her to fuck off because she's Agatha Harkness, and we all know that you're a power-stealing, skeevy bitch. But then fate sort of steps in and gives Agatha enough ammunition to essentially blackmail people. But with regards to Sharon, the neighbor from WandaVision, she basically just tells her that her and some of her girlfriends are having a party that night, and that she was invited. And because her husband is dead and she doesn't have any other friends in town anymore, because a lot of people, I assume, have left Westview after WandaVision, for obvious dull reasons of we were fucking mind controlled for several months here, I'm not staying here anymore. But because she doesn't have many girlfriends left, she agrees to go on the journey with Agatha and them, because originally the list that Lydia gives to Agatha has Rio's designation on it. She refers to herself as Blackheart. But because Wanda casted Sharon as Miss Hart, Agatha is essentially trying to attempting to kind of deceive the road by substituting Blackheart for Miss Hart. And spoilers further, it does not work, because at the end of the first trial in episode 3, Sharon is dead. The Witch's Road does not fuck with that shit, I guess. Moving on. Which honestly, narratively, I think worked, because it did show that all the hype they put around the Witch's Road isn't just hype. Because everyone, when they hear that Agatha wants to go down the Witch's Road, first, they tell her to fuck off because she's Agatha Harkness. And second, they are like, "Are you fucking insane? The Witch's Road is deadly as shit."
Dalton?
And her dying in episode 3, I think, does solidify for the audience, all that hype was not just hype. This is a literal deadly game we're playing. Do not fuck up or you will fucking die. Which, honestly, I like how
Dalton?
Sorry. Yeah, moving on.
Once they are on the road, the pace picks up as, in true fairy tale fashion, their individual and collective trials begin so they can prove themselves worthy of whatever riches lie at the end. Like its progenitor, Agatha all along subverts traditional tropes and keeps you royally entertained with stealthily filling in backstories and laying the groundwork for increasingly emotional and profound scenes and relations to come. Only 4 of the 9 episodes were available for review, but I wouldn't be surprised if by the end we are all crying as hard as we did during the "what is grief but love persevering" moment of WandaVision.
I hope it doesn't try to make Agatha that sympathetic, because like I say, I am so beyond done with the villain is actually an anti-hero because emotionally scarring Doofenshmirtz backstory bullshit.
He doesn't just have one emotionally scarring backstory.
No, and that's very much the joke with Doofenshmirtz, is he has all of the emotional trauma, all of it. But my point is that in modern day writing, especially, there's this bad habit of a villain can't just be evil for the sake of it, or for the sake of having fun, or for the sake of style, or for the sake of being smart. It's only ever because everyone's everyone has an emotionally scarring backstory, and if you know their emotionally scarring backstory, suddenly it all makes sense. And I'm really sick of that. I'm really sick of that trope turning otherwise really cool villains into pansy asses. And I really hope they don't try that with Agatha, because, like I said, one of the show's strengths thus far, one of the positive attributes I will give to it, is that they're not shying away from how much everyone hates, fears, and distrusts Agatha, or how deadly the Witch's Road itself is. This is a very good thing, and I don't want to see them ruin it. Not saying she can't be more three-dimensional than just, I want to screw everyone over, but she can be more three-dimensional without having the pansy-ass backstory. Moving on.
Right. All right, one sec. Although it remains undoubtedly Han's show, you can't take your eyes off her as she constantly edges up against scenery chewing without ever going too far. She is surrounded by excellence. The Coven and more peripheral characters, many of whom are returning from WandaVision, don't have a weak link, and the script is burnished to a high shine and slips seamlessly from comedy to tragedy and back again. There's plenty of action, but plenty of depth too. It's the perfect show for Halloween season, but an absolute treat any time at all.
And so far, I completely agree with that. It is, again, one of the good things about this show is there is humor in it, but it is humor that arises organically and doesn't seem forced. And it also balances. Again, I've only seen the first 3 episodes, so I don't know. I can't speak for the other 6, but at least in the episode 3, where they were first on the road, they do a decent job of balancing genuine horror vibes with the, like, sassy, bitchy Marvel humor. Granted, the aesthetics of episode 3 were kind of a no sale for me, because basically the Witch's Road tailors itself and its trials to the Coven that's walking down it. And because Jen, the Potions Witch, is a a purveyor of hipstery nonsense for upper crust bitches, the first trial very much had the rich bitchy hipster aesthetic, and it did kind of clash with the horror vibes a little bit. Hopefully the other trials will focus more on, like, classic Halloween vibes, and that was just because Jen is, wasting away as a makeup artist for hipsters, basically. Moving on.
Yep. Okay, sharing screen. And Dylan sent this one. Is, well, given the title. Can anyone learn magic in the MCU? Doctor Strange Spells Explained, written by Kai Young, published August 20th, 2023.
I guess this article was older than I thought it was, because I assumed it came out last week, because that's when it showed up on my feed. Which, what the fuck, Google feed? Are you trying to hide things from me? God damn it! Moving on. The answer should, in theory, be yes, but we will see what the article says. I mostly just grabbed it because of the title and because, this is my shit.
Magic in the MCU remains a mystery, even though it has been featured in many projects, including Marvel Studios' Doctor Strange franchise. Magic was also introduced to the MCU as far back as 2011's Thor, as the Asgardians treat magic as a science. Since then, the concept of magic has been developed much further in projects such as Doctor Strange, WandaVision, and Spider-Man No Way Home, though the exact nature of magic has only ever has only ever briefly been explained. As such, it's unclear which MCU characters could actually harbor magical abilities, and the power scale of wizards, witches, and sorcerers remains an ever present enigma.
Okay, first of all, no. Thor did not bring magic to the MCU. That was one of my biggest criticisms of it. It was doing the Arthur C. Clarke bullshit nonsense, which was eventually fixed by Doctor Strange, WandaVision, and etc. But honestly, one of my major criticisms of the MCU's approach to magic lately has been that of all of the magic user characters, the one to have gone into the most detail on how magic actually fucking works is actually Agatha. Even the Ancient One basically just boils it down to some bullshit about spells as a programming language, which again can be a useful thing, like it was in Multiverse of Madness when they started throwing like the platonic ideal of music at each other. But I would very much appreciate if the magic users we have were written as actually, understanding how magic works. And so far, the only magic user I feel like I could actually talk shop with. Actually, no. Now there's two. One is Agatha herself because she spent basically all of episode 8 running Wanda through the fundamentals. And two is Based Teen, who honestly reminds me of me at 16. Because again, he actually knows his shit. He just can't. He doesn't have the juice to back it up. But in short, the broad answer should be yes. There are people with more natural affinity to it, like there are people with more natural affinities to basically every lengthy and in-depth skill. But as a general rule, magic is a skill that anyone can learn. It's just that not everyone will learn it because magic is hard as shit. Moving on. Unless we lost Brainstormer, or he stepped away for a second.
Yeah, sorry, I just was grabbing a drink.
It's alright.
Sorry. Okay. In the MCU, there are several kinds of magic, including chaos magic, eldritch magic, and more. Those who use magic have the potential to access abilities such as portal creation, elongated lifespans, telepathy, and telekinesis, and the conjuring of weapons and shields, among many others. Magic users comprise some of the most powerful characters in the MCU, including Doctor Strange, the Ancient One, and the Scarlet Witch. But it seems that there's still a lot more that needs to be expanded about magic in the MCU.
Yes, this is a problem. I know shit because 1, I'm a practitioner IRL. 2, I am a fan of basically every universe that has a magic system. And 3, I specifically know quite a lot about the Marvel canon of magic. The long and the short of it is wizards or sorcerers channel their power in the Marvel universe by relying on higher dimensional or parallel dimensional entities. What they typically would be is referred to by IRL practitioners as high magic. Witches in the Marvel universe draw their power from the latent magical energy of nature itself, i.e., their magic comes from this world, this reality, which is what makes witchcraft different from sorcery vis-a-vis Marvel or the MCU. Which, I mean, technically, you could make the argument that Wanda should therefore be referred to as the Scarlet Sorceress because her power comes from the archdemon and elder god Chthon, which again is closer to sorcery than it is to witchcraft. If we're being technical, using the comic distinctions as a basis for the MCU's distinctions. And again, most of the groundwork of explaining how the fuck magic actually functions has been done by Agatha. because even the ancient one was all hipstery and vague about shit. So there's that. Moving on.
Uh, 2016's Doctor Strange explained magic in the MCU more than any previous project, as Benedict Cumberbatch's Stephen Strange was introduced to the world of sorcerers after making his way to Carmitage. There he fell under the tutelage of the Ancient One and Baron Koromodo, and started to learn how to harness magic without having any prior experience with the practice. The Ancient One stressed that with potentially years of practice, Strange would be able to cast spells and access magical energies with the best of them, though it takes him a significantly shorter amount of time thanks to his eidetic memory, persistence, and penchant for rule breaking.
It's also implied in the first Doctor Strange that he actually has a natural knack for sorcery, which I'm fine with because it doesn't necessarily imply a surplus of magical energy. It just implies a good, like, natural propensity for the skill of magic. Because for anyone that doesn't know, that is what makes Stephen Strange different from most other magic users in the Marvel Comics. He doesn't have any extra power than anyone else. People like Wanda do, because she's the avatar of either Chthon or Mephisto, depending on which storyline you're looking at. People like the Juggernaut or Moon Knight do, because they are channeling the power of a specific deity. In the case of Juggernaut, it's Sidorak, famous of, the bands of Sidorak fame. And in Moon Knight's case, it's the Egyptian deity Khonshu. But Stephen Strange, most of his natural affinity for magic is an intellectual one. He doesn't have any extra juice than anyone else. He just is better at applying and obtaining said juice. I do wonder if Teen from Agatha All Along tried to get into Carmitage and they wouldn't have him, because it does strike me that because sorcery in the Marvel Comics is borrowed from other entities, it would make much more sense as a path for somebody without any innate juice than would witchcraft, which more so requires an innate ability to tap into the already existent ambient magical energy. But if we get any substantive answer to that question, it will have to come later, because there's still 6 episodes of Agatha All Along to go, and I will keep you all posted. But that is an interesting thing that I just now thought of that I haven't thought of before. Neat. Moving
on. The fact that Doctor Strange was able to learn how to use magic despite being a man of pure science beforehand means that it can be assumed that anyone in the MCU could learn the same techniques. After her reality-hopping adventure in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I'm going to butcher this name and I'm so sorry. Xochitl Gomez's America Chavez is allowed to learn magic at Carmitage, which would potentially teach her to better control her innate multiverse portal ability. This mirrored Strange's own journey in Doctor Strange, as she didn't have any prior experience with magic either, though it's unclear exactly how long it will take her to get the hang of the specific techniques involved.
Another good example, I don't know if they're going to get into, but speaking of Multiverse of Madness, after 838 Stephen died, either through the assistance of Mordo or potentially previous assistance from that universe's Strange, Christine Palmer of the 838 universe was able to make use of several magical artifacts, including the Brazier of Bon Goliath, which not even Strange could use in his first movie. So there's another good hint that basically anyone can use magic, but not everyone will, of course, because magic is hard as shit. Moving on.
Why some sorcerers are stronger than others. Out of all the magic users in the MCU, some have been proven to have higher aptitudes for their gifts than others, and there could be many reasons for this. Some embrace their magic while others use it for a very specific purpose, such as Jonathan Pangborn using his magic to walk in Doctor Strange, though not tapping into the full extent of his abilities. Others, such as the MCU's witches and Asgardians, have an innate ability to harness magic. Scarlet Witch used magic before exposure to the Mind Stone to defuse a bomb as a child, and Thor and Loki's magic is part of their Asgardian physiology.
I am not sure where the fuck you are getting that, because in Thor the Dark World, granted not many people like to remember Thor the Dark World, and I don't either, but in Thor the Dark World it was heavily alluded to that Loki was taught magic by Frigga, and that Thor's powers are limited by Odin's enchantment of Mjolnir. So I'm not sure where you're getting the it's their physiology shit from. Especially because Loki isn't even biologically Asgardian. He's a Jotun. This was very heavily specified. Moving on.
Okay. There's also evidence that there are some genetic factors in an individual's ability to use magic, most notably in the case of Jacob Batalon's Ned Leeds in Spider-Man No Way Home, and reveals that magic runs in his family, quickly learning how to use a sling ring to open portals, despite having never been exposed to magic before. This is akin to how This is akin to how the children of professional athletes are more likely to excel in sports, or how creativity appears to be passed down through generations. So while for some people magic may take years to learn, others could pick it up very quickly, potentially be stronger than others. Sorry.
I hate that they made Ned able to use the sling ring. I hate it so much. Because even if you do have a legacy of magic in your family, it should still take more than an afternoon fiddling with the thing. Like, in order to have that level of affinity for magic, Ned basically would have to be a demigod. And I refuse to believe that he is. So if they're never going to explain this, which they probably aren't, because everyone who knew Peter has forgotten about Peter now, but unless they make mention of him being like descended from like an Asgardian or maybe Morgan Le Fay or somebody like that, I call such massive colossal bullshit on that. But long story short, yes, just like any other skill, like take music as an example. There are some people who are born with perfect pitch and who therefore will gain scholarships to Juilliard at the age of 5. There are other people who can practice all day every day for mastering piano and still barely be able to carry a tune in a bucket. But as a general rule, music is something that anyone can do. The same is true of magic. The difficulty threshold of magic is usually what keeps people out of it, i.e., magic is hard as shit. So only people willing to take on something like brain surgery, which I mean is literally true in the case of Stephen Strange, or rocket science, are probably going to delve too deeply into magic because magic is hard as shit. But it's the hardness of said shit that is the bottleneck factor of why there are more magic users. And even then, as we see in Agatha all along, even they need to occasionally be reminded that the knowledge of how to use magic is more important than the power you have in order to wield it. Or at least that's what's being heavily implied by the Witch's Road and its specific focus on testing their knowledge and devotion to the craft rather than their power in it. Moving on.
All right. Why don't more people use magic in the MCU? The fact that anybody can learn how to use magic in the MCU begs the question as to why more individuals don't use it, particularly since it can seriously increase the superhero strength and power set. However, while for some their access to magical energies is built into their biology, the fact that magic could take years to learn for others means that it's not something that everyone can handle. Stephen Strange only learned magic so quickly in Doctor Strange because of his photographic memory. The same thing that also allowed him to become an incredibly skilled surgeon, but others don't share this impressive ability.
Again, the short version of this is magic is hard as shit, and you don't see many people going into magic because you also don't see many people going into brain surgery or rocket science because it's hard as shit.
Hmm.
I've been studying it for 18 years IRL, and I'm, on the low side of competent most of the time, which is still more probably than most people manage. And believe me, there are plenty of lazy as shit pseudo magical practitioners who want everything to just come easy to them, and such people are jokes and fluffy bunnies. But it also really fucking pisses me off when psychics, people who do have the aforementioned equivalent of like perfect pitch in music, basically lazily coast on their natural affinity rather than actually applying themselves. But that's neither here nor there. Point being, magic is a hard thing to learn, and so the number of people who are going to have not just the mental faculties to do so, but also the stubbornness and devotion, and very often the just straight up atypical way of thinking that it takes to get good at magic is small. I wish we could live in a world like in the Middle Ages and early modern period where the occult sciences were studied right along with the natural ones, but I doubt we will get there in my lifetime. There may come a day when we once again see academic sorcery as a thing, but until such a time, we're gonna be stuck with only the most weird and oddly gifted of the weird are going to really excel at magic mostly. Though, again, just like you can have people with basic understanding of math and science without being mathematicians or scientists, if I ran society, I would at least imply people need to have basic magic competency. But, I don't get a vote, so
Dalton,
nobody fucking listens to me.
you done?
Yes. Now I'm done. Moving on.
Learning magic would be like learning advanced calculus or something equally as difficult. Doctor Strange need access to reference materials and instruction books, and these texts tend to stay in heavily protected places such as the Kamar-Taj Library. A regular individual wouldn't have access to these texts, so it would be impossible for them to perfect their magical powers. Artifacts like the Sling Ring are also often used for more difficult spells like creating portals, and not everybody would be able to acquire this equipment. Doctor Strange was the perfect vehicle to introduce magic to audiences, but his aptitude for these abilities doesn't necessarily translate to everybody in the MCU. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, it's fucking difficult. I do, however, call at least some bullshit on the people don't have access to the appropriate text thing, because one of the first books Doctor Strange opened, and we know because Wong basically reads him out a reading list when he goes and loads up on books, is the Key of Solomon. And the Key of Solomon, otherwise known as Lemegeton or the Lemegeton Goetia, is actually in like anyone has like you can get copies of it on Amazon. I have several copies of the Lemegeton in various different editions. So maybe not the more advanced stuff, maybe not the stuff that like was in the Ancient One private collection, like the Book of Cagliostro, but again, at least basic competency is definitely a possible thing. And another great example of this, and again, I realized that Agatha all along came out after this article was published, But another good example of this is Teen from Agatha All Along, because he specifically specifies he did all the research, he just doesn't have the juice, which implies that you can, in fact, go get the research. Especially because, and as much as I hate referencing this because it requires me to mention She-Hulk was a thing that existed, there was this one asshole who basically did only the sling ring lesson in Camartage and then left to become a stage illusionist, which, again, in a world that I ran, would basically get him shot in the head. That would be a please face the wall now sort of situation, but I don't get a vote, so never mind. But point being, the advanced stuff or the rare stuff might be hard to get your hands on, but it seems like, as in real life, if you type in like books on magic or grimoires or occult knowledge into Amazon, you will probably get at least the fundamentals down, which is why Agatha was so fucking confused that Wanda was able to fire off thousands of spells simultaneously without even knowing how to cast a basic protection spell. Which, I mean, again, based. Moving on.
All right. So now we're moving on to trailers because that was the end of the article there.
Mm.
So full honesty, this, well, just because like it came out and we had talked about it before,
Mm-hmm.
so I felt it prudent that we talk about it. The teaser trailer. I say teaser with quotations around it because it is a 3-minute and close to 30-second trailer.
Mm-hmm.
For the Thunderbolts with a pound sign at the end. Like it's even in the YouTube description.
Okay, okay. If you were trying to make a hashtag, it should have gone at the beginning. And if you're not trying to make a hashtag, why the fuck is it even there?
Also, I hate the fucking logo because it's so fucking simplistic. It doesn't even use the actual Thunderbolts logo.
Yeah, I'm just gonna come right out and say this. The last thing that I was actually looking forward to vis-a-vis Marvel was Agatha All Along, and so far it seems like my desire to enjoy it has not been thwarted, so that's good. But basically, the only things Marvel-wise I was looking forward to this year were Deadpool and Wolverine and Agatha All Along, because while we were excited when the Thunderbolts first got announced, we were operating kind of on the assumption that they would be taking from the Thunderbolts comics,
Right.
or at the very least, kind of using it to soft pedal the idea of like a Dark Avenger style thing, where individual villains of the Marvel Universe could be seen as like surrogates for the various different characters in the Avengers lineup. But instead of like Abomination being the surrogate for Hulk, Agatha being the surrogate for Wanda, Mordo being the surrogate for Doctor Strange, U.S. Agent being Captain America, Red Guardian being Winter Soldier, I guess Ghost being Ant-Man, kind of, and so on. Instead of doing any of that, they made it like 99% Super Soldier, which strikes me as just kind of boring. Because typically, what the MCU excels at when they do team up movies is they throw people from various different corners of the Marvel Universe together and have their differences play off each other.
Yeah.
You know, Thor has the cosmic and mystical side going on. Doctor Strange, even more to the mystical side. Tony
Well,
has
there's
his
also
tech.
the issue with like, okay, hold on. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
No, go
the
ahead.
issue with like having the Thunderbolts is, for one thing, they don't Marvel. This was like since the beginning. The MCU has a fucking problem of keeping villains alive.
Mhm.
Again, how many villains or anti-heroes can you? Well, yeah, villains, I guess, because the Thunderbolts are supposed to be made up a team of villains.
Loki, at least ostensibly, survives in some form because the Loki show exists.
Hmm.
Agatha, fortunately, survived the events of WandaVision, and now her show is the only thing I'm really looking forward to until they finally release some version or other of Blade. Um,
But
let's
okay,
see.
um, okay, U.S. Agent, John Walker, Ava Star, Ghost. That's fine. Granted, these are made of characters from like stuff that was not well received by people.
Which I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't use them, but like I
No, no,
said,
I'm not saying that. I'm just
yeah.
saying the issue is either their character. Well, I mean, John Walker might be the most well liked, actually.
Which is kind of sad when that's the threshold for
Yeah.
likability. But
Um,
point being, there's a reason why when I originally saw the Thunderbolts get announced, I was kind of thinking they were going to go the Dark Avengers plus Thunderbolts vibe and have everyone in the Avengers have a surrogate. Because
well,
that would
okay,
make the most sense.
hold on. Okay, there's also the issue of originally the conception of the Thunderbolts, which was back in the 90s. And for the record, just sidebar here 90s comics were not as bad as a lot of people have made them out to be. I'll be fully honest. I've read a lot.
There are some bad ones in the bunch, but the 90s also gave us a lot of really amazing shit.
Yeah. I think a lot of people just wanted to focus on. There's also a lot of other like compounding things that kind of made people think the 90s was bad.
I mean, Leinfeld being a meme probably doesn't help.
No.
Uh,
But
Frank Miller eventually losing his mind probably doesn't help. Alan Moore definitely losing his mind almost from the minute go from the word go probably doesn't help, etc.
I mean,
And Neil Gaiman
he gave
constantly
us
shitting
Tom.
on his own legacy doesn't help. But
He gave us Tom Strong, and then obviously Promethea was a whole bunch of bullshit. Um,
narrative spell to bring about the apocalypse, as if that's a thing the world needs help doing. And
but what I was going to say was, well, the conception of the Thunderbolts was the Masters of Evil, which were a primary antagonist team to the Avengers, uh, decided to take on the guise of a superhero team. When basically, and this would have okay. I know I've brought this up so many times before since Endgame, but those 5 years in between Infinity War and Endgame in the chronology,
should have had a massive impact and meant sweet fuck all.
like legitimately, there was so much potential. Like so many of the shows in like Phase 4, 5, and some of the movies and shit could have been put there, and it would have made a lot
Honestly,
more.
yeah, honestly, you could have literally centered an entire phase or an entire phase just on those 5 missing years, and it would have worked.
Like it's just. But besides the point, given okay, like the context was the Thunderbolts kind of became a premier superhero team. A lot of the Marvel heroes had disappeared during a fight with Onslaught, which is a whole thing of itself. I'm not going to get
Which
into
you
it.
could easily swap in for the blip, and it would have made total fucking sense.
Yeah, and they obviously they were the masters of evil, and there was basically like a ploy to basically take over the world in the absence, but not like the traditional sense of them trying to conquer the world, but make the world kind of bow to them, I guess, in a way.
They wanted the ego trip, basically.
I mean, some of them did, and then some actually started. The whole thing of like you play a part long enough that you become the part.
It starts to actually work. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So some of them actually.
but as a general rule, they were kind of operating on the basis that Lex Luthor thinks Superman is operating on, i.e., the you only want to be seen as the savior for your own ego reasons, derp, because no one could possibly ever be altruistic.
Right. Yeah. Um. So and don't get me wrong, there have been versions of the Thunderbolts later on that were basically made into Marvel's Suicide Squad, which I'm gonna be honest, I don't find that interesting.
I mean, it's very obviously the route they were going to go with it on the basis that Suicide Squad was successful and everybody knew it now. But
No, I know, but I kind of wish. Well, also the issue is that they never set up the Masters of Evil in the MCU, so they couldn't have done that anyway.
They weren't really a thing to start off with, so there's nothing really to use them with. But even so, even if you wanted Thunderbolts to be the MCU's answer to Suicide Squad, that's even more reason to basically treat them like the Dark Avengers and have every character in the roster be a surrogate for somebody on the Avengers roster.
Right.
Agatha's, Wanda, etc., and so on.
You could use the Suicide Squad thing of like, okay, kind of a weird inversion here with Allegra Del Fontaine, which that she could be the anti-Nick Fury, right?
Yeah.
Where Fury was kind of the good guy and believed in heroes.
Yeah. She's your Amanda Waller type figure who doesn't believe in anything. She views things as just cynical, and she needs them for X, Y, or Z reason.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't have heroes.
It has winners and losers, basically.
Yeah. I'd also say she's probably because I think it said that she works for CIA, right, in MCU.
I don't remember. See, this is the other problem with not actually doing the sensible thing and having this be basically an evil alternate Avengers, because most of these characters are either in things that weren't good to begin with, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier or She-Hulk, or they're basically all but irrelevant because nobody knows or cares about them.
Well, okay, so I mean, thing is, like with even if they are, you could argue that, but if they're put in something good and there's effort put in to make
right, there's no reason it can't be good. I'm just saying.
Hey, look at okay. I know we don't like Joss Whedon, obviously, for being a creep and all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
I was just kind of being a dick. But he made Hawkeye really fucking cool in Age of Ultron.
He did.
Right? So, I'm not saying it can't be done. I think the issue is, obviously, given the people that are often put in charge of these projects right now,
yeah,
it doesn't work.
And that's why I'm focusing so hard on the untapped potential of the concepts that they didn't tap into. Because even if it's a good version of this now, it's still a good version of a very inferior, nonsensical concept, which is already playing. Like, you're already playing on hard mode to do a Thunderbolts movie in the first place. And by limiting your concept so hard to basically just super soldiers and nobody more like niche or from other corners of the MCU than that.
I actually you and I discussed a concept for redoing the Thunderbolts a while back.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk more into it because we do need to watch the trailer.
Yeah.
But I do think I'll be fully honest, I do think our version, even just the cliff notes, because we never really went full in depth with it.
Right. But yeah, like there was untapped potential in this concept, but it remains mostly untapped because for some reason someone decided this team has to be 90% super soldier for no good goddamn reason.
Mm-hmm. All right.
But anyway.
Unless I don't know, you want to do shawarma for MCU or?
Okay, yeah, shawarma. Why not?
I've never had that, by the way.
It's an Indian dish. I've never had it either. Like everybody else, after seeing the Avengers, I really wanted to try it for the sake of trying it, but now I have not either. Though in my
Alright.
defense, I live in the middle of nowhere and we don't have exotic fucking cooking styles around here.
I mostly have Chinese restaurants, to be fair. Or I don't think I've ever seen an Indian food place where I'm at. To be fair, they might be out of the way, and I'd have to it's like a
Go looking for them, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, shawarma.
Shawarma.
I click leave on porch. Your subordinates will be reported to DoorDash HQ.
Alexi, it's me. Open up.
Milena? Hold on! Elena!
I always hate that they made the Red Guardian like such a joke.
Yeah, I
Like,
get
David
that they
Harbour-
wanted to make. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, David Harbour's really fucking cool as an actor, and I think he really could have added a lot of. I mean, he had some scenes in Black Widow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he had depth. There was depth there. It was just never like outright stated.
They
or
never
anything.
actually did anything with it.
Yeah, or it was
Which
played for a joke.
Which unfortunately is probably going to be a running theme with this trailer. Because again, it's not that this wasn't a good idea, it's that you didn't make any use of any of the good parts of
Actually,
the
now I think about it,
potential idea.
Now I think about it, I'm sorry. Okay, side tangent mainly because it's only like about an hour and 20 since we started.
Mhm.
So we kind of need this because we're literally on the trailers now. But so this would be okay. How to make the build up to the Thunderbolts? Because legitimately, I think you could do a whole Thunderbolt, maybe a phase or two of Thunderbolts, because they are also building up the new Avengers. But I feel
they could have, if they wanted to, did basically with Phase 4 what Phase 1 did for the Avengers, but in this case, make it the Thunderbolts.
I mean, to be fair, there were with Allegra de Fontaine. There were some of the like Falcon the Winter Soldier, the end credit scene, and in Black Widow, she was recruiting people.
Right, but here's what you would have had to have done if you actually wanted to make this work and utilize the 5-year gap you gave yourselves. You would have actually had to have spaced out the release of Infinity War and the release of Endgame, because you would actually, instead of alluding to this 5 years and making no use out of it at all narratively, you could have actually had those 5 years be a thing, and then at the end of those 5 years, cap it off with a Thunderbolts movie, and then weave a Avengers versus Thunderbolts subplot into Endgame.
Well, a new Avengers.
Yeah, but point being, if you had been smart by actually allowing this idea to develop organically, you would have given yourself 5 extra years to play with, and you could have had the Thunderbolts fighting the Avengers as either a subplot in Endgame, or maybe had a third Avengers movie in between Infinity War and Endgame that could have been a Thunderbolts versus Avengers movie.
Right. Although, again, it would have to. I'm gonna be honest. If we were to keep certain things like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, stuff like that.
She-Hulk, because Emil Blonsky.
Yeah.
Abomination.
I actually do have a rewrite of She-Hulk that I'm gonna have to post somewhere, probably Reddit. I just gotta, because I turned it into like a PDF document, and I'm trying to
Yeah, again, making an actual She-Hulk show that resembles the character that people like from the comics, or any of the storylines people like from the comics, would have
actually,
gone over
I
much
actually even
better than just.
I used the 5 years too. Like her whole first episode takes place during the 5 years. Like I think it was somewhat immediately after,
Mhm.
or not, well, roughly a little bit after Infinity War.
Mhm.
Like year 1, I think,
Yeah.
of the 5 years. And idea-wise, to explain why we're only seeing her now is because she didn't really start doing the hero thing until after the final fight in Endgame. I actually had like this whole like fourth wall joke in my head that just, those like Vanity Fair videos where like people break down like a director or an actor or whatever break down a
Yeah.
scene in a movie.
Mhm.
She basically would have explained where she was in the scene.
During the battle.
Yeah.
Mhm. Neat.
Actually be fucking creative with them. Okay, anyway,
Yeah, utilize the tools at your disposal, god damn it. It's really not that hard.
but yeah, Thunderbolts would have made more sense with, again, it's weird to me that they arbitrarily put that in the movie, right? That is like a lot of, I mean, relatively not too much time, but it's enough time that the world drastically shifted and changed given the event in Infinity War that
And
happened.
if we actually got to see some of those instead of just having it be alluded to over and over and over, amounting to sweet fuck
even
all.
with okay, and with the ramifications of that, like how people adapted and shit.
Because
Maybe it could have given more credence to the Flag Smashers and Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Which, again, they probably should have been framed more as actual villains, but that's neither here nor there. Like, as an example, okay, half of all the life in the universe blips out of existence. That means that half of the houses, half of the half of all property are basically there for like easy pickings. So the people who didn't get blipped during the blip would basically be living the high life because now there's a massive surplus of property and stuff because
Also,
the people who
okay, think about this. Hold on, I'm okay. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, obviously, but I was thinking of like how the Thunderbolts could have been introduced during the 5 years, right? Like if we're doing the Dark Avengers thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, or mix. I feel like mixing both with also like the Thunderbolts being like Marvel's answer to the series.
Right. But
the idea would be like, I mean, considering, I mean, the Avengers weren't like, it's not like they weren't doing stuff, but it seemed like they were. I mean, they were very much split up. They weren't like super active.
Yeah, after the events of Civil War, it was basically a non-starter for the longest time.
Yeah. So, and they weren't really the team when Thanos happened. So,
yeah, he essentially chose to attack at their weakest possible point. But sorry, I had a point about the whole 5 years thing, and
please.
I got cut off.
I'll say my piece after you're done, please.
Okay, but the thing I was alluding to with regards to, okay, now all the property and stuff is still there, but half the people are gone. That means that basically everyone who survives the blip is now living the high life because there is the same amount of stuff, but half the people who own it. But here's where it gets tricky. After the Avengers bring back the people who've been missing for 5 years, can you imagine how pissed off not just they are going to be because all their stuff has been, taken by other people, but also the people who were left behind are going to feel bad because, we were just starting to rebuild society and then boom, the population doubled again. So, fuck. How are we going to now make do with twice the amount of people when we were operating just fine under half the amount of people for 5 years, and we're just starting to get civilization back on track, only for the Avengers to come in and hit the undo button.
Don't support the Flag Smashers. Hashtag confirmed.
No, but I'm saying, like, that is a genuine, like, political or philosophical question to be had, because
I also think. I'm sorry. Again, no, you're not wrong. I do agree. Like, obviously, it's a. Yeah, I would. That's super interesting. And honestly,
in a sane world, we could ask the question: were the Avengers right to do the thing they did to bring people back?
Obviously, a moral standpoint, a lot of people would say yes, but I think if you actually think about the actual legitimate ramifications,
Mm-hmm.
it's a tough one to answer. Like, it's an answer that really has no good. No, it's not an answer. It's a question that has no real good answer.
Here's actually, I just realized this, and I can't believe I'm stupid for not realizing this. Think about this for a second too. How many funerals have already been thrown for the people who were lost during the blip? How many people had to deal with their loved ones dying, or their children dying, or their parents dying, etc., etc., so on? And how many people have, in that 5 years, been grieving their lost loved ones, now only to realize those lost loved ones are back? And how many people are probably going to wind up having to grieve their lost loved ones a second time when they eventually die of natural causes again?
Right.
That is a hell of an emotional fuck you to do to people.
So, yeah, again, it would have made more sense. And also, there is a version that I wrote of Endgame that I do plan on rewriting again, like fleshing it out, where like Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, who else was on the original Avengers roster?
Hawkeye.
Hulk. Well, no, I'm keeping Hulk and Hawkeye because they had a lot of story potential that we kind of skimmed over in the actual Endgame.
Yeah.
But yeah, those guys would have been blipped instead.
Leaving the late editions to kind of sort things out.
Yeah, which actually would have helped set up the next Avengers a lot better, I think. Actually, there was a video. There's like a series of videos I did that pitched the whole thing. Again, I'm gonna write it down again and post it somewhere. Like, it's just an actual thing. But
I have a vaguely interesting idea of a way they could have done it that would have, I think, been better. But I don't want to go into it because it would take far too long to explain, I think.
I mean, we're an hour and 30 in, so we could use the runtime.
Okay. Here's my idea. What if the blip, the snap, doesn't actually...
Snap. I'm sorry. Can we just go with snap? Because honestly, that sounds a lot better and more fucking threatening.
Yeah, the blip is a stupid term, and I don't understand why people did it. But anyway, so what if instead of snapping people away like that, what if instead what Thanos does is split the timeline so that there's one world where the main Avengers are still around and the late editions got snapped, and then there's another world where the late editions stayed and the original Avengers got snapped?
Oh, so kind of that it was someone actually had theorized that originally. Before Endgame came out.
And honestly, it would have been easy. Yeah.
Sorry.
It would have been easy as pie to do it too, because honestly, you don't even have to go that convoluted if you don't want to, because in the comics, there's actually a dimension inside the Soul Stone called Soul World. And wouldn't it be fantastic if we had characters trapped in the Soul Gem who knew about this thing called astral projection, i.e. Doctor Strange?
Yeah.
And he could have been the go-between and the intermediary between both worlds, because obviously he can astral project himself out of the gem.
Right. I was
And we
gonna.
could have gotten we could have finally gotten the living tribunal trial scene that they were gonna do but didn't do for some reason.
Um, that seems a little better than my idea because granted, I kind of sped things up, so we wouldn't have had the 5 years. We would have had just a year because because that
Which
also
honestly would have
hold
made
on.
more sense because they treat it like a year narratively anyway. So
Yeah. that the other roster had Star Lord and Nebula and Rocket in it as well. And they would have, well, they can go to space and would have been hunting Thanos, and it also would have shown Thanos' journey to want to destroy all life and remake the universe. It would have been the same Thanos instead of we got a younger Thanos.
yeah, I also think it would have been child's play to substitute in Hela as Thanos' crush, given that they couldn't legally do Mr. Death at the time.
Really?
Yeah, there were rights issues because she was
Oh.
bundled up in the Fantastic Four IP for some reason.
Okay, I'm not gonna question that because I feel like that's super convoluted for some reason.
Yeah, it was stupid.
Yeah,
I swear to God, the rights that companies took when Marvel was selling off shit made no sense.
yeah,
Mostly.
but what was I? But yeah, okay. If we're sticking with the 5 years, while there is no technically official Avengers anymore, because all the heroes kind of seem to be doing their own thing at the time,
Mm-hmm.
while still trying to keep the world in somewhat order.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we could have had like a whole phase, like you said. Yeah, we would have to space out of Endgame because we piss some people off, obviously.
Yeah, honestly,
I mean,
I would.
we kind of. I mean, we did space it like what, a year?
Yeah,
Because Infinity War came out in 2019 and no,
2018.
20, and then
Infinity War
Endgame
was
came out in 2019.
2018, and then Endgame
Endgame,
was
and we had Captain Marvel in between that, obviously.
and honestly, that would have been a better place to put the Thunderbolts in rather than Captain Marvel.
So, I mean, I don't want to say we do like legit actual 20, like actual 5 years.
Because that would get convoluted, but you could at least make actual use of it.
Yeah,
And
like I
actually
would
have the
say
audience be on
space.
board with the story.
I would say space Infinity War and Endgame maybe about 2.5 years.
Yeah. Which honestly would have given them more time to fix some of Endgame's writing issues as well,
Right.
which
I mean, I was gonna say 3 at most,
right.
but I feel like 2.5 to 3 at most.
Yeah, which honestly is just a normal blockbuster movie making period, so it's not even that far.
And then you could. Fuck, that actually does raise up a couple questions.
Yeah, assuming you still kept going with the like 2 or 3 projects a year thing, that gives you another like 6 to 8 projects that you can play with.
Well, I'm also hold on. I'm trying to because the movie. Okay, so you could do Black Widow in between that. Obviously rework that a bit more.
Yeah, Budapest Incident. I don't know why in the fuck it wasn't the original idea to do the Budapest Incident between her and Clint, but why the fuck wasn't it the Budapest Incident?
Actually, I was like the bare bones of the story of what we got for Black Widow is good. I feel like you just gotta like make it a little more.
I still think it's a missed opportunity not to do the Budapest Incident because they've been setting that up since Avengers 1.
Yeah. Well, we have to set up Elena, so.
Which she could have still been in Budapest. Budapest is in fucking Hungary.
Red Guardian?
So it would have made sense for like Eastern European characters to be there.
All right.
You still could set up Red Guardian and Yelena about while still explaining what in the fuck Clint and Natasha have been on about since 2012 with regards to the Budapest incident.
Either way, no Taskmaster, just because. To be fair,
What they decided to do to that character made no fucking sense.
I've had a few ideas because I've tried rewriting Black Widow in the past, and there are a few ideas to do with Taskmaster I've had.
Mm-hmm.
The one that makes the most sense is making Taskmaster Taskmistress. I know it's a bit stupid, but hear me out. Have Antonia. I think that's her name, Antonia. Either way,
Antonio LaFaso?
whoever the girl is, like the daughter of Dreykov was the guy's name.
Mm-hmm.
Supposed to be an antagonist, but lackluster.
Yeah, bait and switch.
That idea, who got turned into Taskmaster or Taskmistress in this case, my idea was that, well, apparently Black Widow assassinated her father with her inside the building with in the explosion. I would have had that her father did die. She didn't. She was injured, obviously, but she got remade and even took like a variation of the super soldier formula, because there are various super soldier formulas, and Taskmaster does have a variation of the super soldier formula in the comics.
Right, and again, it would be nice to actually remember that as a part of the Captain America mythos, unlike Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which basically just.
But let me go on. Obviously, she takes over her father's operation and gets training from the Red Room, gets geared up, even learns. The variation of the super soldier formula that Taskmaster takes gives him photographic muscle memory, hence the ability to, because the AI thing they have.
Everyone.
Yeah, the AI thing in the movie is fucking stupid to me. Just because anyone could be Taskmaster.
Like that would have been a gimmick to give like Chameleon or maybe even Mysterio if you were going to use that as a thing.
I'd say more Chameleon, to be fair.
But either way, it doesn't belong with Taskmaster in any description.
But she's basically the main villain, right? And she's guided by revenge against Black Widow, basically ruining her life. And she is basically like a comics. Besides her being female, she's basically a comic accurate Taskmaster on the sense that she's a shit talker. Because Taskmaster is a big shit talker in the comics. She's She's super skilled. She can match, and I think obviously giving her that more personal connection to Black Widow, because she is kind of a dark reflection of.
Because a lot of the villains tend to be dark reflections of the characters. Which is why it would have made sense to do the Dark Avengers thing, but never mind.
Fair enough. And she is. Well, to be fair, granted the writing could be bad, but I feel like she's sympathetic, but not sympathetic enough that she is seen as a tragic villain. Obviously, in this case, because her dad was a bad person. Maybe she knew that, but that doesn't excuse her for basically continuing his work by kidnapping girls from all over the world and turning them into soulless killing machines. But it's a complicated thing. Obviously, I'm just saying, like, the other way I had was kind of connecting to an idea in the comics that also did bring up a thing that I don't know why they've been trying to forget, that Black Widow brought up in Age of Ultron, with like the whole
The sterilization thing.
yeah. Granted, she did find
They keep trying to forget that because it pisses off the feminists. Because how dare
But-
you imply that a woman's value is limited to motherhood?
which I don't think that was the point of that scene at all.
Yeah, but that's what they got out of it, which is why they hate it.
Yeah. Anyway, this one was, to be fair, I used this idea in a project of ours, Dalton,
Mm-hmm.
already. But in the comics, Natasha actually has a cloned son.
Mm-hmm.
My idea was that Taskmaster was that when this would have kind of been a little bit of an overreach in terms of like info dumping of like lore for Natasha, but even though they sterilize the Black Widows, they do take some material for genetic purposes in case they ever want to create someone from if one of the Black Widows shows enough promise
Mm-hmm.
to keep the
In case they want to essentially mass produce them.
yeah. And this guy, if they wanted to keep that kind of Terminator-esque thing, they were going with this one,
Mm-hmm.
with this Taskmaster. He is a clone of Natasha that was basically raised from inception to be a cold, emotionalist gun, basically.
So he got the Damian Wayne backstory mixed with a little bit of Homelander.
Yeah. And it's a nice, interesting parallel with Natasha, who was that and kind of has to save her son from that life.
Following in the same footsteps as she had.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you'd end it, obviously, because there are so many ways to go. Mainly, I'm just going off like there were some scenes with Taskmaster with this one Black Widow that was giving him like information downloaded into his HUD so he could like copy moves and stuff, where she runs her fingers across the mask in like a smile. Like she whispers that. And it just felt like a weirdly intimate thing, but also like some weird, like kind of tragic element there.
Yeah. Which
granted, it was, but I feel like with the idea I have here, it has a little more like weight to it.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I already have this. I use that idea in somewhere else, but I do think, logically speaking, the first idea I had makes a little more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, first keep U.S. agent. That's the difficult one because Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Because okay, if we're going like with original lineup of Avengers Endgame, like those who stay behind, Steve is still around. So the U.S. government couldn't really put.
Well, he's a fugitive after Civil War, so that might work as a justification.
True. Not sure how the story would go then because Bucky and Sam aren't there.
Mm-hmm.
But okay. Obviously She-Hulk series, which I have a whole rewrite already done with that.
Yeah, I actually use the comics as a basis, goddammit.
Which I mean, I think I've discussed that rewrite with you. The idea was to make Abomination kind of the main villain. Like he took over Intelligentsia and was going to because if anyone remembers like Avengers Earth Mightiest Heroes, the two-parter Gamma World. That was basically.
I still think that making him like go good during She-Hulk works, though.
I'm not gonna argue that it doesn't, but it's like
the one plot. It's It's like the one plot thread from She-Hulk that I would actually keep is Emil going good.
Well, I mean, if he's going to be part of Thunderbolts and stuff,
Well, make him the moral center of the team then, essentially. The reluctant, like the guy who was a former villain being a reluctant member of a team of villains, essentially.
Right. Either way,
We should banana.
right. We'll talk a little more
Or
because
shawarma, I suppose.
yeah, shawarma. Go. Okay.
Hi, Dad.
Sorry about the wait. It was on an important call. Highly classified. Lot of work, lot of work. Many irons in fire.
You feel fulfilled?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so full. So filled. But why do you ask this? What?
I don't really have anything to say because it's not bad. Like the actors bounce off each other. Well,
Yeah, it's fine. I just don't like. Again, this is not a project that I was in any way looking forward to, given the stupid decisions they've already made with it before it's even been made.
I mean, I do also want to mention because I did do some replacements
Mhm.
for the Thunderbolts. Obviously, Abomination, Vulture. I'm just gonna say fuck it with the Morbius thing because it's not gonna go anywhere, and it's a
And if it
waste.
does, it'll just be bad. So why?
It's a waste of a character. I'll be fully honest. So I'm using them here,
Mhm.
and the Tinkerer. He was like part of Vulture's crew, and he
So
got away.
obviously, Vulture is Falcon. If we're going by the Dark Avengers thing.
Yeah. Although he would be, because I think idea wise, like if we're actually coming up with a story here for the Thunderbolts, is Allegra de Fontaine collects a bunch of criminals that she can control, supervillains,
Mhm.
or just people that are willing, like anti-heroes, because like John Walker kind of is, right?
Mhm.
If we're still keeping him like true to form of the MCU version of John Walker that we've seen,
Mhm.
he's not a bad guy. Just he's not perfect.
He's not Steve.
No. Then again, who is?
And as Erskine said, good becomes great, bad becomes worse.
With John Walker, that's complicated because I don't think he became bad. He wasn't bad before he took it.
He was broken.
Yeah.
He was just barely clinging to his sanity, and that's why after he took it, he the
Well, I wouldn't
famous
say he wasn't.
smashing someone to the ground with the shield scene.
I wouldn't say he was. I wouldn't say he was like clinging to sanity before he took it. He was clearly a one thing, he was a soldier before.
He had PTSD, is what I mean.
Yeah, and also
severe PTSD.
Also, just the burden given all the accomplishments Steve did as Captain America.
Yeah,
I mean, how do you live up to that?
You can't compare with the purer than driven snow Boy Scout.
Yeah. Yeah, Allegra de Fontaine. Given, also, this was what I want to bring up earlier when you were mentioning about like the property thing, like the world and how it would work during the 5 years.
Yeah.
Because considering, more than likely, there are some like political powerhouses or people in the high positions of a government or something.
Not to borrow too much from our.
Hold on. I want to get this out. Warlords or dictators or whatever still probably be around. I'm sure some disappeared during the snap.
Mm-hmm.
But given the disarray that Earth would find itself in at that time,
hmm
More than likely, anyone who is a greedy, corrupt motherfucker who is used to like
They're
staging
gonna
like
spring whatever traps they can. Yeah.
yeah, who's used to like staging violent uprisings or coups or whatever is going to seek to gain more land and territory while while the UN or whatever cannot respond.
Because obviously, and again, this is kind of borrowing a little bit from Lionhearted, but um, obviously, in the aftermath of an apocalypse, the one thing everyone wants is security, and
Yeah.
whoever can offer them a return to normalcy or a return to safety after a literal apocalypse is going to be able to play people like puppets.
Actually, that also makes me interesting because if we did Wakanda Forever during those 5 years, we could have introduced Namor earlier. Because logistically, I think it would have made sense for him to well, no. He only really started to reveal his presence when American or just the UN was trying to search for more vibranium in the world.
When Riri developed the vibranium detector, basically.
So I don't think he would show up, obviously, but I mean, he doesn't strike me as like a conqueror type.
Nah, he just wants him and his to be left the fuck alone.
I mean, to be fair, he's an arrogant motherfucker.
Well, when you're worshipped from an early age as a god, well, I mean, just look at Homelander. It happens.
I mean, Namor isn't that bad.
No, but what I mean is it's a very similar dynamic. He was the chosen one from an
Fair
early
enough.
age, and so he has an inflated sense of self-importance that
Because I was
leads to
thinking maybe,
narcissism.
because I was thinking it'd be interesting if he was part of the Thunderbolts, maybe for a later edition or something.
Yeah, if there was ever a sequel, I wouldn't mind having him on it.
I just think he would be so interesting to bounce off.
Because who?
Like, I'm just-
Wait, actually, come to think of it, you could put him on there because there isn't a Thor. I guess if you wanted to canonize the events of Loki, you could maybe bring in like Kid Loki or something. But honestly, having Namor be the surrogate for Thor would kind of work.
Yeah. But yeah, like, given the chaos that's technically it would be kind of small scaled, effectively. Just given that it's contained to Earth, there's no outside threats of like aliens or stuff, but it's dictators or warlords trying to conquer more, basically trying to become a bigger threat to the world than they were before.
I still like the idea I had of making White Vision the villain of Thunder, the like threat of Thunderbolts.
I know, but I'm working.
Sorry.
I get it, and honestly, that would have been my first choice too. But I'm just working with the logical reason why the Thunderbolts were. Well, I mean, maybe we could combine the ideas, like a warlord. Some country caught White Vision, and
well, we already have Hayward from WandaVision essentially planning to do exactly that. So. And that's how you get, that's how you get Agatha in things.
Well, I guess the question would be how the spell would be broken then.
You unfortunately you would lose Agatha all along in this alternate universe, which, given how good it is so far, would make me sad. But having her actually make a jump to the big screen would almost make it worth it.
But okay, so Haywood would capture White Vision. I wouldn't say reprograms him because he was already reprogrammed. Considering,
yeah, he's kind of like Amazo in Justice League Unlimited when he first gets made by Luthor, and he gets told that the Justice League are bad guys and so on.
Right.
And then at the end, he they reach him, and he realizes that he was tricked, and then away he goes. That would be kind of how I would play it. I would play White Vision as like this unstoppable force of nature, almost like the way they did Brightburn.
Well, I mean, he did get the reprogramming, like get the memories of the illusion vision from WandaVision.
Yeah, but you could essentially have it that that's his sort of interior conflict. He now has two sets of memories and two sets of programming, and it would take
so complicated.
Which is basically where I assume this is where Agatha and Mordo come into the fray, because you'd need them there to help him work through that and to reprogram his mind, because illusion vision was a shard of the energy of the Mind Stone. So it's going to take someone with a considerable amount of magical or cosmic power to interface with that.
Okay, try to think here. Okay, plot-wise, Allegra de Fontaine, during the 5 years, assembles a team of Hayward super beings, or a team of supervillains to act as a stand-in for the Avengers, given their disbanding.
Mm-hmm.
As
I guess the hex gets broken by Mordo, probably. They have Mordo save Agatha.
Yeah, you have to, I'm not gonna lie, man, you'd have to rewrite a lot prior to this just so it can work.
Right, but still, in theory, that would be their move to get Agatha out of there, which honestly she'd be grateful for anyway. So, there.
No, I'm just saying, there's a lot of steps you have to make to make this
so that this can line up.
Yeah.
But anyway, we probably should Shawarma pretty soon.
Yeah, Shawarma.
What brings you here?
There is something wrong with me. An emptiness. I'm just drifting, and I don't have purpose.
I mean, that could basically be the tagline for this movie, because as it is currently formulated, it really doesn't, but...
Yeah. It's weird to me that Bucky's on here, given they kind of had somewhat of a happy ending in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and he looks very depressed and emo right now.
Yeah, it feels like this just exists because the MCU says so, and not for any in-universe reason.
Okay. I think we, again, not to toot our own horn, obviously, but our whole diatribe we did on for 20 or so minutes.
Yeah.
Trying to,
it's a better concept just on the face of it than whatever the fuck they're doing here.
I mean, to be fair, we were going through some major hoops just to make sure it
right,
fit.
but this is the work they should have done before they pulled this out of their ass.
Yeah.
And if two random smucks can spend about 20 minutes sorting this shit out, a whole ass room of professional screenwriters should be able to do it in about 5 minutes. If they were actually good at their jobs.
Actually, okay, you know what? I'm going to look it up how many years it took for, was in between Endgame and the Infinity War and Endgame, just because I am genuinely curious to figure out how it could work. Okay, Infinity War was 2018. Okay, Endgame was 2019. Okay, so, and I said about 2.5 to 3 years.
Yeah. So that would
So,
leave Endgame coming out in 2022 or 2023, I think.
hold on. Let me do the math here. Okay, so let's say okay, let's round it out and say 3 years, right?
hmm
Okay, so from 2018.
2019, 2020, 2021,
2021.
2021.
Yeah, 2021. Uh, and you said like on average there's 2 projects every year, right?
Yeah, that was the pace they were going
Okay.
at, 2 or 3 every year.
uh,
So that gives them between 6 and 8 projects that they could do.
I mean, if we wanted to introduce the series stuff as well
hmm
in between that,
Yeah. Which honestly, this is during COVID, so that probably would be the best anyway to do shows more so than movies.
COVID. COVID happened. Sure, didn't
2020
happen.
through 2022.
Really?
Yep.
I could have sworn it only happened like in 2021 to.
Nope. March of 2020 through like May of 2022. Because like the lockdown started the weekend of St. Patrick's Day.
I'll be honest, man. It just feels so
I
long ago that my mind is kind
I
of just forgotten.
I remember specifically because the weekend before Onward had come out, and it was one of the first movies to bomb because COVID. That, and I remember because my friend from high school was going to go have fun doing a lot of Irish drinking bullshit, and he couldn't because COVID lockdowns, and he was pissed.
So I'm thinking if we're still keep John Walker,
hmm
it would have to be just another Captain America movie in this hypothetical.
I mean, you could still do a show around him, like they could, like swap out Falcon and the Winter Soldier for a U.S. agent show, and they could still do it
Or
that
no,
way.
well, no, it could be Steve, like a miniseries.
Yeah,
If we're
I
playing with
guess
if we're playing
I
with, if
guess
we're
given
playing
that we're actually using the 5 years and not just jumping him straight to his happy ending for no reason.
or if it's the idea I proposed for the rewrite of Endgame, so Steve would be snapped then.
Cause like, okay, Baron Zemo was involved in the events of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and
Yeah,
he and Steve have history, obviously, because Civil War is a thing. So
yeah.
you could have Steve, um, be a fugitive on the lam, and then the U.S. government comes in and manufactures U.S. agents. And honestly, you could have them send U.S. agent to track down Steve because he's a fugitive, and that does make sense of why they would make him, because in their minds, obviously, it takes a super soldier to catch a super soldier, kind of thing.
Although you wouldn't get as much depth. I don't know if you'd get as much depth with John Walker as we did in the show.
Granted, there were a lot of mistakes made in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so
I mean, John Walker was actually was one of the best parts of
Yeah,
it, though.
like that was well handled and everything, but like you can still have that in a like Captain America: Fugitive from the Law show or something.
Captain America Outlaw.
There we go. Or just call it the Outlaws, because other members of the Avengers are still on the lam too, so because Civil War was a thing.
Okay. Jesus Christ, this is gonna give me a fucking headache.
I keep telling you we should move on with the trailer, and you keep padding out the length.
Well, I'm sorry, you got me into like a creative thinking space now, and
I know. You can't help it.
you pushed me here, motherfucker. Okay, if anyone's to blame, it's you.
In my defense, you were the one who said we needed the side tangents for time purposes. So
Okay, well, next time pick longer articles.
I was fine with this just being a short episode, so it was your idea that we needed to pad out the length.
Fuck you. Shawarma.
Shawarma.
I thought throwing myself into work was the answer.
Ironically, set design actually isn't too bad.
It's still not enough to make me care, but
No, I know. I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying. I don't like it any more than you do, but at least I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy all the fucking time.
right. The only thing this trailer is making me want to do is go and watch Agatha some more.
Right. Although I am curious about the use of "Where is my mind" regarding this.
Yeah, I don't know. I assume it will be explained in the actual movie, but then again, this is Phase 5, and they don't always, so who knows?
Sentry's in this, so
Wait, Sentry's in this?
Yeah.
Isn't
it was
he a
supposed to
bit
be. I
big?
think, huh?
Isn't he a bit cosmic for a movie like this?
Yes and no. It's a weird thing with Sentry because
I mean, why would you establish Sentry in a Thunderbolts movie?
he has been part of the Thunderbolts actually and the Dark Avengers.
I guess if they're gonna use the Void personality as the villain, that could work.
Well, he's just called Bob here, so. I think originally he was supposed to be played by Steven Yeun, but they recasted him.
Okay, but that's not. Oh God. Oh. This movie
What?
continues to be frustrating and disappointing.
Why?
Frankly, if I were gonna introduce the Sentry, I would have done it in a Guardians movie. Like, have the Void be the villain of Guardians 3 or something.
He's not really a cosmic hero.
Which, I mean, in fairness, they probably could have done basically that with Adam Warlock and have the Magus be the villain, but they didn't.
Yeah, Sentry's not a cosmic hero. He's basically like a Superman stand-in.
Right, but his powers are very, like, cosmic and high level and shit. It seemed weird. For one thing, it seemed weird to be introducing a new character in a team-up movie. Period. Not saying it can't work. I'm just saying.
To be fair,
you probably should have made a Sentry movie would actually be much more interesting than this. Or hell, speaking of team-up movies, given that DC is currently in a state of constant flux,
Squadron Supreme.
if I were Kevin Feige right now, I would be getting on the horn with Henry Cavill and Gal Gadot and being like, "Hey, you guys want to be in our Squadron Supreme movie so we can show DC how to make a proper Justice League?"
To be fair, they're not like the.
No, but I'm saying this version of them probably could have been, in the same way that this version of Civil War was very much an answer to BVS.
Fair enough.
Because Kevin does like making fun of DC's stupidity, and this would be an excellent way not only to do it, but also to get pretty much all of the disgruntled DC fans on your side, because you're basically showing DC, see guys, it's not that hard to make a good Justice League movie. And people finally would have gotten to see Henry Cavill play a Superman. Obviously, it would be Hyperion in this case, but you know what I'm saying. Moving on. Shawarma.
When your feet are on the air, your head on the ground. Yeah.
I mean, Ghost looks cool with her new design, but Taskmaster, my God.
Mm-hmm.
I get that for some reason, China doesn't like the skulls, so you can't use the skull design.
Yeah, they don't like anything having to do with death or the supernatural. Despite the fact that both Doctor Strange movies have made bank in China, which I find absolutely fucking hilarious.
Motherfucker, there's China. God, China's fucking stupid.
That's also one of the main reasons why the Ancient One was recast as a white woman, because China doesn't like the fact that Tibet exists, and the Ancient One was originally Tibetan, so they changed the role to pander to China. I think
Jesus.
actually they might have kept Multiverse of Madness out of China, and that's why it didn't make $1 billion, because usually Marvel movies in China make about between 50 and 100 million, which if it had gotten that extra 50 to 100 million, it would have crossed the $1 billion mark. Because it ended at like 953 million, I think. Box office wise. Yeah, China are a bunch of censorious morons, and for the sake of China and its people, fuck the CCP again.
Long live Tank Man. Anyone knows what that is? You'll know.
Long live the actual family, the ruling family of China, which is currently headquartered in Taiwan. Because when Mao's communist takeover happened, the actual royal family of China decided to fuck off to Taiwan. So in actuality, the actual government of China is in Taiwan, and the CCP are a bunch of communist fucks.
That explains a lot. Anyway, Shawarma.
Oh no.
Who are you?
I'm Bob.
Who sent you, Bob?
Nobody. You were all sent?
Is Bob supposed to be a reference to Bob, Agent of
Everyone here
Hydra?
has done bad things.
No, his real name is Bob Reynolds or Robert Reynolds.
Okay, that.
You don't know shit about Sentry, do you?
I knew that was his name, but I dislike that they're using the Sentry of all characters as a comedically simple dude. The Bob Agent of Hydra joke would have been funnier. even just going on like comedy routines, Bob Agent of Hydra would have been funnier than reducing the Sentry to Bob.
Well, to be fair, I think he just walked into his cell. Like, this is where he's been held for a long time. And
I
it's Marvel. They always do jokes. And I didn't really
know, but the Sentry is an immensely powerful character, and I don't like seeing him reduced to Bob any more than I like the fact that the MCU's Adam Warlock is some child-minded idiot because he was not fully cooked, quote unquote.
All right.
Moving along, though.
Shawarma.
Shawarma.
Shadow ops. Robbing government labs. Contract kills.
Yeah, so?
So, someone wants us gone. What the hell?
Are you feeling anything? Because I'm feeling absolutely nothing here. But I am also one who isn't naturally predisposed to lots of emotions, so it might just be me being the asshole again.
No. Nothing.
Shawarma.
Shawarma.
We're brought up with this belief that there are good guys and there are bad guys.
What's the plan?
This could get messy.
This looks like the most generic spy like thriller movie ever.
Hmm.
And like the MCU has done better like political or spy thrillers before, because I mean Winter Soldier and then Civil War, obviously. And even Black Widow, I think, at least had more intrigue about it going in, because we wanted to see what they would actually finally give Natasha as a solo movie. It didn't live up to any of that potential, mind you, but at least there was more hype going into a Black Widow movie. Whereas this literally just feels like we have a hole in the schedule, just put something there, we'll figure it out later.
Well, later's now.
Yeah, it is now later, and it doesn't feel like they've really put much thought into how the hell do we make this work yet. Which, granted, it might just be because it's the first trailer and maybe some of the CGI isn't finished yet and whatever, but like there are dozens of other things you could have used this slot for that would be much more engaging than this bullshit.
Alright.
Shawarma.
We're also seeing some rewrites, like pre-writes of Thunderbolts, and those are interesting. Anyway.
Shawarma.
But eventually, you come to realize that there are bad guys and there are worse guys and nothing else. Look at you. So adorable.
I mean, that works well as a line, but I fundamentally disagree with you there. Like, there are actual good guys some of the time. Granted, there are also situations where it is a toss-up between bad guys and worse guys, but given that we live in, given that the MCU is a universe that contains Steve frickin' Rogers, or contained him anyway, I refute the idea that there are no unvarnishedly good guys, because as long as Captain America exists, there are good guys. Same thing with if somebody said that in the DC universe, the obvious rejoinder would be, but Superman exists. and in a universe in which Superman exists and is actually properly written, there are good guys.
Okay. There's like 20 seconds left, shall we?
Shawarma.
Shawarma.
Don't worry, she's bulletproof. What happened to bulletproof? It's bulletproof-ish.
Also, the font on the title is remarkably just bland.
That's not good.
Yeah, I
I'm
mentioned
I'm
that- I
sure
mentioned that before.
I'm sure they probably will redo the logo because they usually redo the logo and stuff like this. But in all honesty, the Thunderbolts
They already
logo looks
did. That
Oh,
is the
that's
reason.
right.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the original logo looked actually better than the one we have now. It's another case of, well, we have this release date on lock, so just put this here until we can think of something more interesting to do with it, and they didn't think of anything more interesting to do with it, I guess. Next.
Yeah, give it a second. It's loading.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, by the way, Megalopolis was really, really, really bad. That's what I've heard from people who have reviewed it. Because that surprised me because the trailer didn't look awful, but apparently it is, which is sad.
All right, so we have From the World of John Wick, Ballerina official trailer.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say we're shills for John Wick or anything done by those that worked on John Wick, but
There have been a lot of these John Wick movies or pseudo John Wick movies like Nobody and
Bullet Train.
Violent Night, and they've all been pretty dang good for what they are.
Don't forget Bullet Train.
Yeah, Bullet Train's another one. But yeah, there have been a lot of John Wicks or pseudo John Wicks, and for the most part, they've all been pretty damn good. The only one I didn't like was Atomic Blonde. And wasn't there one called Peppermint as well? It was a sort of pseudo John Wick movie.
Mm.
Didn't really like that one either. But those are the only two that I can think of off the top of my head that were actually like not good. Which, given that I'm not a shoot 'em up type a shoot 'em up type person, it's a cold day in hell when I'm praising a shoot 'em up movie, and most of the John Wicks and pseudo John Wicks have been pretty good. So there.
No.
Yep, banana.
Do you like to dance? I know a school where they teach dances. I could take you there if you'd like.
Is that Winston?
Yes.
Awesome. In McShane, having a career resurgence is such a good thing. Banana.
Banana.
To stop the assassin, you must become the assassin. You will always be weaker. You will always be smaller. You want to win? Improvise. Adapt.
I mean, this is not going to go over well with the feminists because they're admitting to, biological realities and shit, but good on you, Ballerina, as a project for acknowledging that.
Mm-hmm. Well, no,
Banana.
but no.
Cheat. Welcome to the Continental.
Eve Macaro of the Ruscaroma. What a pleasure to see you again.
Okay, so this takes place, like, obviously before, like,
The end of John Wick, or even possibly the beginning of John Wick.
chapter 4. Because you got John. It's both great. I'm both grateful and saddened to see Lance Reddick here.
Yeah, because eventually they're going to have to find a way to write him out. Because, well...
This is a prequel, so... They already killed his character off in John Wick Chapter 4, so...
Right, but I mean, if they do another season of The Ballerina is what I mean.
It's a movie.
Oh, I thought it was a show. No, it's the Continental thing that's a show. Never mind.
Wow.
But if they ever do a sequel to this movie, they're going to have to find a reason for him to be... They're either going to have to make it contemporary to the current timeline, or they're going to have to find a reason for him not to be there. Because, well, the actor is dead.
I think doing a time skip to contemporary time, because I'm not sure how long it's... Because we saw John earlier, like briefly, cameo-wise, but...
Yeah, I'm curious if they'll try to find some way of writing Lance Reddick out, other than him being dead, or if they'll just make any sequel to this in the current timeline.
Banana?
You have no idea what you just walked into.
Let's go. I'm all for it, man. Like,
yeah, they seem to be keeping up with the stylization that I really like for the John Wick franchise. Banana? Mm-hmm.
They killed my father. This isn't done until they're dead.
Fate is a very humbling thing.
I hope this does well. It looks really good.
yeah. I mean, in the world of John Wick, it's made by people who've done on John Wick, and it's not.
It's not like. It's also not like they haven't managed to make movies similar to John Wick that don't include John Wick work.
Yeah.
Like Violent Night, Bullet Train, Nobody, presumably also this. So.
Atomic Blonde.
Yeah, Atomic Blonde, I think it might have been financially successful, but I still don't like that one very much.
That's why. I'm curious.
I don't know. It didn't have a lot of the cool factor that the John Wicks and pseudo John Wicks usually have.
Spy thriller with really great action.
Yeah, but it's more than that. Like even Bullet Train had a lot of like bright colors and stylization.
Okay, so it was the fact that it was a little too grounded for you.
Yeah, they fell short of the John Wick standard and made something that was a little closer to Jason Bourne movies, and I don't really like those.
Okay.
Banana.
Banana. Come on, you piece of shit. Work.
Oh dear, the computer is going on strike.
You're him. The one they call the Baba Yaga.
Oh, so John's actually going to be involved in the plot, not just as a cameo. Cool. Unless they spoiled the
I'm
cameo
surprised.
in the trailer. Which,
But also,
meh.
I mean, to be fair, it says from the world John Wick, so
I know, but I figured he would be a background character at most. I didn't expect him to actually be involved in the plot. Should have though, because Keanu Reeves really likes playing this character, and I'm pretty sure he's probably going to find ways to play him until he dies, more or less.
Shall we?
Banana.
How do I start doing what you do?
Looks like you already have.
I'm really hoping this does indicate John will be more directly involved than I thought, and they didn't just like spoil the cameo in the trailer, because that would really piss me off if that's all he does in the movie.
This almost feels like it's right before the 4 years prior to the first John Wick.
Yeah, it's right before he meets Helen or something, I'm guessing.
Yeah, because like even like in his voice, you can see when he says like when he tells the ballerina that she already has like does what he does, right? Be like him. He almost sounds like sorrowful or regretful about it.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, kid. You kind of lost on that one.
Yeah.
Which I guess leads to the question of, are we going to see him actually meet Helen? Because honestly, I'm of two minds on it. Because you could really do a really interesting, like, romance action movie that follows him meeting and falling in love with Helen.
And we also that would also imply that we'd see his impossible task.
Yeah, and then show him earn his way out with the impossible task, which has to be as graphic as fuck to, demonstrate how much he earned it.
Yeah. Well, also,
yeah, you could also get guy who played Santino back and explain the whole thing with the marker there.
Yeah. Although that feels like it does remove a little bit of the mystique. I mean, because we kind of guess what's up.
Yeah, you either have to never show any of that, or you have to be sure that you can do it justice. There is no half-assing it.
Yeah.
You either win or you die, literally.
Mm-hmm. All right. So with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avideze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
shalom and fuck off. We will see you